I'm going to go through the review from start to finish. You'll have some questions where we'll give you a point in the coordinate plane, and you're going to have to find the 6 trig functions for whatever angle that is. What I tell you guys with these is always draw a picture. If our point is at -3, -4, I'm going to label that as x and y, and label that on the coordinate plane accordingly. -3, -4 is going to be somewhere right here. So that's going to make this x-axis, or our x value, -3, somewhere right there, and our y value, -4. With that information, we can find the hypotenuse of this triangle. We call that r in this case. So remember, this is the section where we relate SOH, COTOA, and our trig functions to x, y, and r. R, we're just going to get using Pythagorean theorem, right? This is a right triangle. I can say that this is x squared plus y squared equals r squared. X is -3. -3 squared plus -4 squared, that's going to get you 9 plus 16 equals 25. And when you square root both sides, you get r is 5. R is always going to be positive. It's never going to be negative. The only thing that can be negative is x and y. So now that we have x, y, and r, we can find our 6 trig values. So to find sine, cosine, and tangent, sine, I know that that's going to be y over r, which is going to be -4 over 5. Cosine is going to be x over r, and that's going to be -3 over 5. Tangent is y over x, and that's going to be -4 over -3. The negatives cancel out, so I get +4 over 3 as my answer for tangent. I don't ask you guys to memorize so much in this quiz, right? You'll see down the line, I'll give you some formulas that are going to be useful. But this is one thing that you should memorize. You should know what sine, cosine, and tangent are in terms of x, y, and r. Now to find the other trig ratios, so if I want to find cosecant, you just need to know that that's the reciprocal of sine. So it's going to be r over y, which is going to be -5 over 4. Secant, you should know, is the reciprocal of cosine. So that's going to be r over x, which is going to be -5 over 3. And then cotangent, which is the reciprocal of tangent, which is x over y, so +3 over 4, right? Once again, the negatives cancel out. And that's all you need for that problem. All right, any questions on that one? All right, so the next one is pretty similar, but there's also something about it that's a little bit different. It's not going to give you a right triangle when you go to draw it. So if I label this as x and y, and I want to draw this in the coordinate plane, my point at -2, 0 is going to be somewhere right here on the x-axis, right? What angle does this correspond to at this part of the x-axis? Do you remember? Okay, good, 180. So really, you're just finding the 6 trig values at 180. Now you can do that a couple of different ways if you know the quadrant angles. Okay, where did I leave off? Okay, or you can just label it as -2, 0. And you know that this is x and y. For your r value, right, notice that this doesn't make a right triangle. It just gets us a straight line. For your r value, think of r as the distance between that point that we just drew and the origin, and that's 2 units, right? So r in this case is going to be 2. So now that we have an x, y, and r, we can find our 6 trig ratios. I know sine of my angle theta is going to be y over r, which is 0 over 2, which is 0. Cosine is going to be x over r, which is going to be -2 over 2, which is -1. Tangent is going to be y over x, which is going to be 0 over -2, which is 0. All Right, so once again, I don't ask you guys to memorize much, but know sine, cosine, and tangent in terms of x, y, and r for your quiz. And now to find the rest of them, we just need to take the reciprocal. So cosecant is going to be the reciprocal. 2 over 0. 2 over 0 is going to get you an undefined answer. Right? Don't rule out the possibility of it being undefined. Right, now secant of theta is going to be r over x. So 2 over negative 2, which is also negative 1. And now cotangent of my angle is going to be x over y, which is going to be negative 2 over 0. Again, 0 on the bottom means that your answer is undefined. Okay, so for the next two are probably the more challenging ones in this section, just because we need more information than we're given. So let's see if we can piece together what this information is telling us. I want to find sine of theta where secant of my angle is negative 4. Well, if you know that secant goes with cosine, right? If you remember cosine is x over r, then you know that secant has to be r over x. Right, so that means negative 4 as a fraction is going to get you negative 4 over 1. And determining which one's negative and which one's positive, r is always positive. So I know that r has to be positive 4. And x in this case is going to make this negative. So that means x has to be negative 1. I'm also told that my angle is in quadrant 2. In the second quadrant, I have that x is negative and y is positive. So I know that whatever I get for y is going to show up in the second quadrant above the x-axis. All right, so if I go to draw this, and I get a point somewhere right here. All right, let's say that this is negative 1. I don't know what y is, but I know what r is. R in this case is going to be 4. Right, and we can find y by using Pythagorean theorem. Right, I can use x squared plus y squared equals r squared. X squared in this case is going to get me negative 1 squared. I don't know what y squared is. R squared is 4 squared. So we get 1 plus y squared equals 16. Subtract 1 on both sides, and then I get y squared is 15. Square root both sides, and then my y value I know is going to be positive square root of 15, right? Positive because it shows up in the second quadrant. Right, and from here, we should know sine is y over r. In this case, it is a right triangle, so you can use SOHCAHTOA to figure out what sine of our angle is. Right, but in this case, it's going to be ry, which is square root of 15, over our r, which is 4. So I get square root of 15 over 4. All right, and we can do the exact same thing for the next one. I know that tangent in terms of x, y, and r is going to be y over x. And if my angle theta is in quadrant 3, keep in mind in the third quadrant, both x and y are negative. Right, so if x and y are both negative, that would make 5 negative and 4 negative as well. My point is going to be negative 4, negative 5. And with that information, I want to find cosine. All right, so I can draw this. I know it's going to be somewhere in the third quadrant right there. My y value is going to be negative 5. My x value is going to be negative 4. Don't know what the hypotenuse is going to be, my r value, but we can use Pythagorean theorem, right? X squared plus y squared equals r squared. So I know x squared is going to be negative 4 squared. Y squared is negative 5 squared, and that's going to get you 16 plus 25. And that's 41. And then to get r, we square root both sides, so my r value is the square root of 41. Whoa, 41, okay. And cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, or x over r. So I know that cosine of my angle theta has to be x, which is -4, over r, which is the square root of 41. And then we can multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 41. To rationalize the denominator, keep in mind in your final answer you don't want a radical in the bottom. So we get -4 square root of 41 over 41 as your final answer. So again, these are the more challenging ones. I mean, it's not as straightforward as you're given a point in a plane, and then you just have to figure out r squared and then figure out your values from there, right? We give you limited information, and you kind of have to make sense of what information we're giving you guys. All right, the last one on this page, I had a lot of questions about this one, but keep in mind, what does this mean? Okay, so I have sine of theta is less than 0. What kind of numbers are less than 0? What do we call those? Negatives, right? I also have that cosine is also less than 0, meaning cosine is negative. If I know that sine is y over r, and cosine is x over r, and r is always positive, that means y is negative, and x is also negative, right? In what quadrant are both x and y negative? Third, right? The third quadrant. All right, very simple problem, that one. All right, it looks a lot more complicated than it is. All right, are we good with this page, guys? Any questions? Okay, I also had questions about these kinds of problems. You'll get a couple quadrant angles on your quiz. You can always relate it to a picture, right? So I know that 90 degrees is going to be on the positive side of the y-axis, right? So this is 90 degrees. I can always just pick a point. Easiest point to pick, 0, 1. X is 0, y is 1. That's going to be on the y-axis, and that matches our 90 degrees that we were given. And think of r, the r value. I have an x and a y. Think of the r value as the distance from the center to that point that we just drew. So I know r has to be 1 in this case. Sine we should know is y over r, which in this case is going to be 1 over 1, which is just 1. All right, and if we asked you for a different trig value, like let's say tangent, you would still do the same thing, right? Just pick the appropriate numbers. All right, so for cosine, we can do the exact same thing. I know that 180 is going to be on the negative side of the x-axis, somewhere over here. So if I pick a point right here, easiest point to pick, -1, 0. And again, think of r as the distance between that point and the origin. And that's going to be a distance of 1. Cosine, we know that that's x over r. Our x value here is -1. Our r value is 1. So we get -1 over 1, which is -1. All right, so the next one, we have tangent of -180 degrees. It's negative, no big deal, but if you're someone that doesn't like negatives, how can you make it a positive? Yeah, right, you can add 360 to it. In this case, that's just going to get you 180. Same exact thing, right? Whether you go backwards 180 degrees or forwards 180 degrees, you still end up at the same spot. So once again, 180 degrees is right here. We can pick a point. We've used this point before. We can say negative 1, 0 is a point. And so I have x and y. Tangent, we know that that's y over x. Y is 0, x is negative 1. So 0 over negative 1 is just 0. All right, now with 270, same exact thing. This is an angle that lands on one of our axes. All right, 270 degrees is down here on the negative side. So we can pick a point 0, negative 1. And then once again, r, the distance from the origin to that point. And cosecants. Maybe you don't know what cosecant is, but if you know what sine is, right, a lot of you are good with the reciprocals. Right, so if we know sine is y over r, then cosecant has to just be the reciprocal of that. So cosecant is going to be r over y, which is going to be 1 over negative 1, which is negative 1. Okay, so the rest of your quiz is going to be on solving triangles. We'll give you some right triangles and then some non-right triangles. So if I give you a right triangle, you'll see a 90 degrees somewhere in there. In this case, angle C is our 90-degree angle. Right, we might give you a triangle, we might not. If we don't, we should know how to label it. I know angle C is my 90-degree angle. Don't know what A is, and I have that angle B is 46 degrees. I also have that side C is 29.7 meters. All right, so we want to solve the right triangle. To solve the triangle, I want to find all the missing sides, all the missing angles. So we can find the missing angle pretty easily with the information that we're given. Right, we're given two angles already. I have a 90-degree angle and then a 46-degree angle as one of my acute angles. In a right triangle, the two acute angles are always going to add up to 90. So to find angle A, we can do 90 minus 46. And that's going to get us 44. So I know angle A has to be 44 degrees. Now to find your sides, I only have one side out of the three. You can use one of your trig ratios, SOHCAHTOA, right? So let's say I wanted to find side A. You can use any of your angles for that, either A or B. Let's use A. If you use angle A, notice that this angle is opposite of our side. And we are also given a hypotenuse. I want to find the opposite given a hypotenuse. We use sine. I want to use sine of my angle A. Right, sine of 44 is going to be my opposite over hypotenuse, 29.7. And then to get A by itself, we can multiply whatever's on the bottom on both sides. So I can do 29.7 on both sides. Cross it out, and then A is going to be whatever you get when you do that in your calculator. So do 29.7, make sure your calculator is in degrees. And then we should get A is, to the nearest tenth, 20.6 meters. Okay, so we can do the same process to find side B, right? I don't have B. But we can do the same thing. Maybe we want to use sine again. So if I want to use sine, opposite of side B is going to be my angle B, so 46 degrees. So we can do sine of 46 degrees is my opposite over my hypotenuse. And once again, we can multiply 29.7 on both sides. All right, so we do 29.7 times sine of 46. And to the nearest tenth, we get, for our missing side, 21.4 meters. All right, and that's every side, that's every angle. All right, so for the next one, we can do the exact same thing. Right, I want to solve the right triangle. We're not given a right triangle, so we can draw one. I know that my angle C is 90 degrees. A, we know that that's 61. We don't know what B is, angle B, but I know side B is 39.2 centimeters. So to find angle B, we're given two angles already. So what we can do is we can subtract 90, or no, subtract 61 from 90. And that gets us 29 degrees for angle B. All right, it's a right angle, so A and B are going to be complementary. So now we can use SOHCAHTOA to figure out the rest of our sides. Let's try to find side A. A is one of our legs, and we are given one of our legs. So two legs, they're either going to be an opposite or an adjacent. So we should use tangent. So we can say tangent of, let's say 61, is going to be A over 39.2. And then we can multiply both sides by 39.2 to get A by itself. And then 39.2 times tangent of 61 is going to get us for side A 70.7 to the nearest tenth centimeters. And for our hypotenuse, we have options. We can either use Pythagorean theorem, or we can use another trig ratio. Let's try another trig ratio. I'm going to try sine of, let's say, 29, right? It really doesn't matter which one you use as long as you label the sides correctly. So I have sine of my angle 29 is going to be 39.2 over my hypotenuse C. And now to get C by itself, I can multiply C on both sides. And so I get C times sine of 29 is 39.2. And then I can divide sine of 29 on both sides. And now this answer, once you put that in your calculator, is going to get you your side measurement for C. Right, which should get you to the nearest tenth, 80.9 centimeters. Okay, so we'll give you a couple formulas. We'll give you law of sines. Right, this is law of sines. And we'll give you the formula to find the area of a triangle. All right, I don't believe we did area problems together, right? But they're not super difficult. Okay, so if we ask you to solve a non-right triangle, for the sake of this quiz, it'll only be ones that you would have to use law of sines for. We're going to do law of cosines after this. It's going to show up on your test. If you're given two angles already, we can find the third by adding them up and subtracting them from 180. All right, so if we do that for our missing angle A, we should get 65.6 degrees. All right, so that's all of our angles. And now to find our sides, we can use law of sines, right? Now that I have a pair, I have an angle A and I have the same side A. If you have a pair, you can use law of sines. So we can do A over sine A, so 2.6 over sine A, so sine of 65.6, equals, let's try to find B. So B over sine B, so B of sine of 42.6. So then from here to get B by itself, we can multiply both sides by sine of 42.6. And then this number, when you put that in your calculator, is going to get you your side measurement for B. All right, which should get you to the nearest tenth, 1.9 centimeters. All right, and we can do the same thing to find angle C. So I can say C over sine C. So C over sine of 71.8 is, I can use the same pair, A with A, so it equals 2.6 over sine of 65.6. And then once again, to get C by itself, you can multiply by sine of 71.8 on both sides. All right, so that number, whatever you put in your calculator, is going to get you your answer. All right, which to the nearest tenth is going to get you 2.7 centimeters. All right, so there's two left. Again, we're given two angles. We need to find the third. 80 plus 70 is going to get you 150. So we can do 180 minus 150 to get our missing angle, so 30 degrees. And once again, we have a pair. I have an angle B and a side B. So let's start with angle A, or side A. So I can do A over sine 80 is B over sine B, so 24.5 over sine of 70. And then I can multiply both sides by sine of 80 to get A by itself. And then you're plugging that in your calculator. And you should get to the nearest tenth 25.7 feet. And then now the only side that we're missing is side C. So once again, we can use law of sines. C over sine of 30 is 24.5 over sine of 70. So I do sine of 30 on both sides. And then that number, when you plug that in your calculator, is going to get you your answer. All right, right, so we should get about 13.0 feet for this one. All right, the only other thing on your quiz tomorrow is going to be the area of a triangle. We gave you the area formula. So all you need to do is match it with the correct one and plug it in. But no matter what, as long as we have two sides and an included angle, we're able to find the area of the triangle. So this is going to be my area is 1/2. In this case, I'm given side A and side C, so 1/2 AC times sine of my included angle B. All right, so it's going to be 1/2 times 4.75 times 5.25 times sine of 114.25. All right, and once you put that in your calculator, you should get, let's say to the nearest tenth, you should get 11.4 square centimeters. Goes. All right, and that's everything that you need to know for your quiz. There's an extra review. Do we see it in Canvas? All right, I published it this morning. You'll have, yeah, I have solutions. I'll put them in there. So you guys have it. That one's not graded. That's just for extra practice. It looks pretty similar to this. You can expect your quiz to also look pretty similar to this. You'll have a little bit of everything.